For most of human history, wolves were not companions. They were nightmares. If you were alive 30,000 years ago, the sound of howling outside your camp didn't make you think of loyalty or friendship. It made your heart stop. You were small, slow, and largely defenseless in the dark. Wolves weren't. They hunted in coordinated packs with terrifying endurance, jaws powerful enough to crush bone, and eyes that could see through darkness like it was daylight. By every measure of survival, they had the advantage over you. And yet, out of every animal humans have ever encountered, horses, elephants, primates, birds, it was wolves that became our closest companions. Not just animals we used, animals we loved. Today, there are over 900 million dogs on Earth. They sleep in our beds, detect cancer in hospitals, guide the blind, find people buried under avalanches, and yes, wear birthday hats while sitting beside cakes. But none of this was designed. No ancient human tribe held a meeting and decided to invent a domesticated animal. Dogs were an accident, one of the most important accidents in the history of our species. And the strangest part? Wolves may have started domesticating themselves long before any human understood what was happening. To understand how, you need to imagine the Ice Age world. Between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, though some genetic studies push this date as far back as 135,000 years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. Small, mobile bands of maybe 20 to 50 people, constantly moving across vast, brutal landscapes. Most hunts failed. Winter was a killer. A single broken leg could be a death sentence. And at the edge of every human camp, just beyond the firelight, wolves waited. Here's the crucial detail most people miss. Humans are extraordinarily messy eaters. Even during the leanest winters, hunter-gatherers left behind bones, scraps, marrow, hides, and partially eaten carcasses. To a hungry wolf, a human camp wasn't a threat. It was a moving buffet. The first wolves to approach were probably cautious. The aggressive ones that got too close got speared. The terrified ones that stayed too far away starved. But in between, there was a third group. Wolves with a slightly different neurological profile. Less fearful, less reactive, more tolerant of human proximity. Modern genetics has identified specific differences in the genes controlling anxiety and social bonding in dogs versus wolves, including variants of the Williams-Burren syndrome chromosome gene, directly linked to hypersocial behavior. And early wolves carrying similar variations may have simply been born calmer around people. Those wolves ate better. They consumed more calories with far less danger than wolves hunting large prey alone. Over generations, natural selection rewarded calm over aggression. The friendlier wolves survived, the aggressive ones didn't. And as those calmer wolves bred with each other near human camps, something unexpected began happening to their bodies. In 1959, Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belyaev launched an experiment in Siberia that would become one of the most famous in the history of biology. Using silver foxes, wild animals with no history of domestication whatsoever, he selected only the tamest individuals for breeding in each generation. No training, no tricks, no rewards. Just selection for one single trait, low aggression toward humans. Within 10 generations, the foxes were visibly friendlier. Within 40, they were actively seeking out human attention, whining when left alone and wagging their tails. But then came the part nobody expected. Their bodies changed too. Ears became floppy, snouts shortened, tails curled upward, coats developed patches of white. Stress hormone levels dropped permanently. Belyaev's foxes hadn't been bred to look like pets. They just started becoming them automatically. What Belyaev had discovered is now called domestication syndrome. Evolutionary biologist Adam Wilkins and his colleagues later proposed that nearly all of these physical changes, the floppy ears, the shortened faces, the patchy coats, trace back to a single underlying cause: reduced activity of neural crest cells during embryonic development. Neural crest cells help build the adrenal glands, which drive fear and aggression responses. When you breed for calmer temperaments, you inadvertently dial down these cells, and the physical changes come as an automatic package deal. The process that slowly turned wolves into dogs almost certainly followed the same hidden biological pathway. Picture the first proto-dogs emerging around Ice Age camps. Slightly smaller, slightly rounder in the face, slightly less terrifying than a full wolf. Not pets yet, not fully wild anymore either, something the world had never seen before. And humans weren't passive observers. The benefits of having these animals nearby were enormous and obvious. Wolves hear frequencies humans can't. They smell predators from miles away. They track prey across landscapes that would take humans days to cover alone. A proto-dog sleeping near camp wasn't just a scavenger, it was a living early warning system. When bears approached in the dark, the wolves reacted first. When rival groups moved nearby, the wolves smelled them before any human woke. When prey herds were within striking range, the wolves could lead the way. Harvard evolutionary biologist Brian Hare discovered something else that makes dogs genuinely unique in the animal kingdom. Dogs instinctively understand human pointing gestures. You point at something, your dog looks exactly where you're pointing. No other animal on Earth, not chimpanzees, not wolves raised from birth by humans, reliably does this without extensive training. Dogs were shaped by tens of thousands of years of reading human communication. They didn't learn to understand us, they evolved to. This is why dogs hold the title of the first domesticated animal in human history, older than sheep, older than cattle, older than agriculture itself. And when farming finally did arrive, dogs adapted again. As human diets shifted heavily toward grain, dogs evolved significantly more copies of the AMY2B gene, which produces amylase, an enzyme specifically for breaking down starch. Wolves carry roughly 2 copies. Many modern dog breeds carry over 30. Dogs literally rewired their digestive systems to match ours, generation by generation, without anyone asking them to. The emotional bond runs just as deep as the biological one. When you look into your dog's eyes, both of you release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone released between parents and newborn infants. A landmark 2015 study by Japanese neuroscientist Miho Nagasawa showed that even a brief mutual gaze between dogs and their owners produced a measurable oxytocin surge in both species. Wolves raised by humans do not do this. This response was sculpted by thousands of years of shared evolution, written into both our chemistries. And those famous puppy dog eyes? They aren't accidental either. In 2019, anatomist Julianne Kaminsky and her colleagues discovered that dogs possess a small facial muscle, the levator anguli oculi medialis, that wolves completely lack. This muscle allows dogs to raise their inner eyebrows, creating that wide, soft, emotionally expressive look that humans find almost impossible to resist. Dogs didn't learn this expression. They evolved it specifically because dogs who could trigger human caregiving instincts survived better, got fed more, and passed those features on. But domestication has a shadow side. The same process that made dogs our companions has in modern times become something darker. Pugs have been bred so flat-faced they struggle to breathe through their own noses. Dachshunds are so long-spined that disc disease is nearly inevitable. French bulldogs are now so skull-heavy that the majority cannot give birth naturally without surgical intervention. We shaped them entirely for our own preferences, and the cost is written permanently into their bodies. And yet, underneath every one of them, the wolf remains. When your dog circles before lying down, they may be enacting behavior inherited from wolves flattening grass before sleep. When they howl at sirens, bury food in the garden, or twitch through dreams on your couch, instincts from tens of thousands of years ago are still surfacing inside a modern living room. Inside every Chihuahua is the shadow of an Ice Age predator. Maybe that's why dogs feel fundamentally different from every other domesticated species. Cats live alongside humans, cows tolerate us, horses work with us, but dogs joined us. They followed us across frozen tundra and into burning deserts. They slept against our bodies when the cold could kill. They crossed land bridges with us into entirely new continents. And when civilizations rose and cities appeared, they came into those too. In Germany, archaeologists uncovered a 14,000-year-old grave containing the remains of a man, a woman, and a dog, all 3 carefully buried together. The dog had suffered a severe illness as a puppy, one that would have been fatal without extended care over weeks or months. It survived, which means Ice Age humans, people barely surviving one of the harshest periods in Earth's history, were choosing to spend their irreplaceable food and energy nursing a sick dog back to health. That is not utility. That is not strategy. That is something much older, much stranger, and much more recognizable. No master plan started any of this. No ancient inventor sat down to create humanity's best friend. It began with scraps left at the edge of a fire, and with a few wolves, just slightly calmer than the rest, creeping a little further into the light. And tonight, somewhere near you, one of their descendants will fall asleep closer to you than strictly necessary, completely unaware of the tens of thousands of years of accidents, evolution, and quiet loyalty that carried them to exactly that spot. Now you know.